Welcome back, everyone. I'm I-Team Chief Mike Magnoli, and it's time for a live interview with a political candidate as we are less than a week away from the election. So today and tomorrow, we're looking at District 7 in Palm Beach County. Voters in that district will be picking their next county commissioner. That's because Mac Bernard isn't in this race because of term limits. He's been in that role for 8 years, but now we're going to have a changing of the guard. And former State Senator Bobby Powell is the Democrat going for it. Bobby, good to have you with us this morning. Last time when you were here before the primary, we spoke about affordable housing and smart growth, but I want to talk about something a little different today. I want to talk about how do we make Palm Beach County a good place for small businesses? How do we attract them to Palm Beach County, and how do we help small businesses thrive in Palm Beach County?
Thanks, Mike. That's a good question, and what I can tell you is that in Palm Beach County, there is the Equal Business Opportunity group that works within the county to try to build that. But small business has been the backbone of this country economically. So we have to make sure that there's programs in place to continue to grow those businesses, to make sure that there's grants and funding available, not just from the county, but from the state level and even federal level. We have Sheila Sherfless McCormick, who's sending money down through the federal government. I got the chance to meet the Small Business Administrators Secretary when I was in D.C. a couple of weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago. But this is an opportunity for us to make sure that all of those things work together holistically and making sure that the team is working well. The state legislators, all of Palm Beach County state legislators, our county commission, our federal government, to build those funds to build Palm Beach County and to build small businesses locally and here. Also, one of the things that we should do is really measure, take a look at the statistics of what we're doing here in Palm Beach County in terms of small businesses and look at ways that we can grow that would be important for us to move forward.
Okay, I want to turn the page here and talk about Amendment 3 because it looks like it's going to pass. That's recreational marijuana.
Absolutely.
If it does, do you think that the county commission should do anything to make sure that we don't have pot smoke everywhere? And what, if anything, can the county commission do so that it's a safe rollout?
The first thing that we would do is, as a member of the legislature, leaving the legislature, that will be set in place by rulemaking. The legislature will pass a bill that will set aside all of the rules.
So that's in Tallahassee, but is there anything locally that the county commission can do?
Well, we have to let Tallahassee work first, and then what we would do at the county level is prepare an ordinance based on what the state does to fine-tune whatever we can do within those parameters to make sure that people are not just freely smoking on the streets. Remember, there's the potential that we'll pass recreational marijuana. That's for personal consumption. That doesn't mean that everybody else who's walking along the street should have to consume what somebody personally consumes, maybe in the comfort of their own home.
We don't want that. We don't want pot smoke everywhere.
We don't want it everywhere. We have children. So there's got to be parameters that we set based upon whatever's put in rulemaking or what's passed in the law. Once it probably passes, then the county will have its own ordinance to keep it within the parameters of what we want here in Palm Beach County.
All right, what I'm hearing from you is, Mike, that's kind of like a cart before the horse question. All right, so let's move on to something else. When you were in Tallahassee, you were a state representative first and then a state senator. This is coming back into local politics, or really, is this your first foray into local politics from state politics?
It would be.
Why are you doing it? Why go from Tallahassee to the county commission chambers?
Oh, Mike, that's a great question. It was a need, right? One of the most qualified people that I believe could run for state senate is Mac Bernard, who's leaving the county commission. But there would have been a void here in Palm Beach County in terms of the talent that's available to run for the county commission. So being that I had served 8 years as a state senator, which if you look at it, their 4-year terms would have been 2 actual terms, then 4 years in the state house, I've had the opportunity to interface with local communities, local governments, the budget from all of the different areas that I've represented, as well as dealing with people outside of the states and outside of Palm Beach County. So it gave us a perfect opportunity and the perfect candidate to run for county commission so that we don't miss a beat. This also gives us an opportunity. I'm well versed on some of the issues dealing with housing. My degree in urban and regional planning from Florida State University is focused on housing and community development. That's one of the strongholds and one of the gaps that we have here in Palm Beach County. So being able to work specifically on that is important.
I know you're very passionate about that.
Absolutely. It's the only way or the most likely way we can close the wealth gap.
I want to talk about your time in Tallahassee. You were the head of the Black Caucus.
Yes.
A lot of what you did was fighting Governor DeSantis's legislative agenda.
Absolutely.
Will you speak to that? You guys were there to run interference, it seems like.
We were. And the challenges of me being the chairman of the Black Caucus for the state of Florida at the time, which is at the time was 27 or 28 legislators throughout the state of Florida, representing nearly every area. Now, I was the chairman during the 2020 through 2022 term, so 2 years. We had the pandemic, which was COVID. We also had the pandemic of George Floyd. So a lot of the policies that came out from the governor at that time were detrimental to the black community. So we had to fight against the governor and sometimes work with the governor to make sure that we did have vaccines in our communities. When at first they were only at CVS and Publix, we had to make sure that we were able to get them in churches. We did that by working with Jared Moskowitz, who was the Director of Department of Emergency Management, but now Congressman, to make sure that we had testing sites. That required a lot of work with Scott Rivkees, who is the Department of Health, who is Surgeon General, as well as working with Moskowitz and the governor's office, sometimes not with the governor directly, but making sure we had the resources to protect the people of the state of Florida. And then the George Floyd issue as a whole and how we came back at policing, working with Fentress Driscoll, who is now the leader of the Democrats in the House, and my colleagues in the state Senate to craft legislation that would not harm our communities here in Florida when it comes to how we adjust based on what happened with George Floyd was one of the biggest challenges. Now, always, always, always being the chairman of the Florida Legislative Black Caucus, we still fight to make sure that small and local businesses continue to gain opportunities. The discrepancies in terms of home ownership is always at the top of the foray. And also our universities, our HBCUs, Florida A&M University, Bethune-Cookman University, Edward Waters, Florida Memorial, making sure that we have funding for those institutions so that our students can grow and have the education necessary to compete in this global economy.
Let me ask you this, Bobby. If you win this election, you will be the representative for District 7, but a lot of times things that go before the county commission affect everybody, okay? So sometimes the needs and the wants of the folks, let's say, in the acreage, not the same thing as the needs and the wants of the folks in North Palm Beach, as an example. So will you speak to when is it important to be a representative and to be real passionate about the folks that you represent directly? And when is it important to look at the broader ramifications of something that the county is doing? And that speaks to being a commissioner for all of the districts.
Great question, Mike. As a state senator, I have been a state senator for Palm Beach County, for my area, but also for the entirety of the state. As a county commissioner, I know that I'll represent County Commission District 7, but also I try to take the lead from the district commissioner in terms of what they're expressing and what their passion seems to be with regard to their area. But I know the #1 job of an urban planner is to serve the public interest. And as an elected official, we're elected not to be representatives of ourselves, but of those people who we represent. So as a county commissioner, I will have a strong hold on understanding the diversity of what we represent, and also looking at the entirety of Palm Beach County. I've lived here my whole life, so I know, and I've been to a lot of the areas, but some of the areas I don't know like the back of my hand.
Okay.
I'm willing to learn, but I'm willing to work with people to make sure that we're getting the best representation at all times, and we're doing the will of the people.
It's noteworthy that some of our county commissioners did have experience in Tallahassee first and then came to the county commission level. I'm thinking of Maria Sachs. She was a longtime legislator and is now the mayor of the county. What do you predict happens with this election cycle? You think you're going to be working with some new people, or do you think the commissioners that are running hold their seats? Let me pick your brain about that.
That's a good question. I think for the most part, I think that there's a high possibility that there may be new commissioners.
We're going to have some new faces. Are you going to be one of them?
Of course. I'm guaranteed to be, there's guaranteed to be a new commissioner for District 7.
For District 7, yes,
and
absolutely.
All likelihood it's likely to be me, but anything can happen. Anything can happen.
Your opponent's going to have something to say about that tomorrow when I have him on the sofa.
Probably won't be that much, but anything can happen. And then there's another race where the incumbent is underwater in terms of the registration of Democrats and Republicans, so that becomes a challenge for that person to hold the seat. There is a Democratic race where you just mentioned the mayor of the county. I think that she is in a good position. I think she's in a really, really strong position. I don't see anything changing there, but I do believe that there will definitely there'll be some possibilities of change. And regardless, whether there's changes or not, I will hopefully go into the Palm Beach County Commission, and that will be a change within itself that could shake things up.
Final thought. What's the last question? You tell me. Mike, ask me this.
Mike, ask me this. What is my prediction on election night? How do we do? What do we look like here in Palm Beach County?
Okay, tell me.
So in Palm Beach County in 2022, as a Democrat, I was disappointed in the turnout and disappointed in some of the races. I'm optimistic in 2024. I'm energized. I believe that a lot of the Democrats here are energized. I see in the state attorney's race, I see people checking the box for Cox. I see the sheriff retaining his position. I see Democrats being very, very strong here in Palm Beach County on election night. I wish everybody the best. I love everybody. I'm going to work with anyone who wins their election, with Democrat, Republican. I'm not going to play the partisanship game once we're elected because you're in that position. But in terms of going forward, I'm rooting for blue. I'm blue all the way, so let's get it done.
Okay, it's going to be interesting. We'll see.
Interesting.
Good to spend some time with you. We'll be right back after this.